Welcome everybody, Red Arrow 23 here. Time for another episode for Land Like a Boss series. Today we're going to be covering the two smoke flare landing on the right side of a right hand beach. Let's boom this beach. So before we break it down, let's just have a quick look at the attack itself. So we're looking at the right hand side down beach at the moment. So we can see that this is the right hand side of the beach, and it's lower than the left hand side of the beach. So we've identified which beach is going to be, and now we're looking at our smoke points. We're flaring as low as we can, and then we're flagging all four boats in four boats in the left smoke, smoking the right side, smoking, and then landing four in the right smoke. And then you would usually flare up. So this would, if the beach on Manticore was hot, this would work. Yeah, there's a few options here. So let's break it down. So you can see, first things first, I got rid of the hero. You don't necessarily need to do that in flare landings because, man, she nearly won that battle. Because when you're doing a flare landing, you can obviously control what you're hitting. You're not rapid tapping, so you can just be like, you select Zuka and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But if you want to make it easier for yourself, you can suicide Sparky on the other side, or whatever hero you're running. Just be sure that if there is a rocket launcher in range, that when you do suicide her, you don't lose the delay on the rocket launchers that are going to be in range of the beach, because if you do make a small error, you can use some of the delay just to get under smoke. So let's have a look. First things first, we want to flare as low and as far right as we can on the beach. If we flare too high, the Zukas just start to spread a little. First thing we're going to do is the first thing I like to do every time I'm doing a two smoke landing, and that's make sure we get the height of these smokes in the perfect spot. So I usually like to go back and have a look at a replay, preferably on the same base, but as long as it's on the same orientation map, then we'll be away. So this is a right hand side down base as well. It is on Atlas, so that's worked out well. And all that I'm looking for here is the height of the Zukas launching on the beach. So it's right there, and we're using that so that we can smoke appropriately. Obviously they've already moved further down the beach now, so you want to look at it when they're on the boats, and you'll be able to see how high they do launch. You can see that you can get a little bit lower, see how high they were before, and now they're a lot lower by the time you flare across. So we remember how high up on the beach that they landed, and the reason that that is important is we want the middle of our smoke to be straddling that line. Our other reference point is this line here, or just to the left of that line, where that line goes through the beach. It's always there, so that helps us out. It's a good reference point, and we know that the widest part of the smoke is now exactly where the Zukas are going to land. And the reason that's important is if we were up here, there's probably only enough room for 3 boats of Zukas if you put the smoke too low, and if you put the smoke too high, same thing over here. So when that next smoke comes in, hang on, let's just zoom out a second. Whoop. So when that next smoke comes in, here, you can see that that's the widest point all the way through. If we were to put the smokes too high, which is a common mistake, because if you're used to landing on the left-hand side beach, the Zukas actually launch lower. So this wouldn't be the area that you would go, but if you did put your smokes too high, and then your average line is here, you can see that that's just not going to work. So make sure you get those smokes nice and low. You can use the waves as a reference point once you have seen previous attacks. and then we can get ahead with our first flag. So first flag's going to be right on the edge there, and then we can just start to follow with the rest, remembering that when you do this smoke, when you do any two smoke flare landings, or any two smoke landing really, you need to start dropping your Zukas fairly quickly, because that first smoke is going to expire. See how I'm already quarter of the way through the smoke, and that's when I've dropped my Azuka, and you'll see that the smoke is going to expire before I get to the end. So it's very important. Obviously, if you've got, well, maybe not obviously, but if you've got a lower level account and your smoke isn't up to max, then this is going to be a lot harder, like a lot harder. Sometimes might even be impossible depending on your smoke level. You can also throw the hero in here. If you do, you are going to lose the delay. It is possible to land all 9 boats under 2 smokes, but it's not very repeatable from what I've seen. If you're a psycho crazy skilled player and you can do it 100% of the time, all the power to you, but I haven't found it's particularly repeatable. But you can land that hero just outside the smoke, either before the first boat of Zukas or after a boat or 4 or 3, and then that way the hero will catch up. So here we go, we're just going to cover just the Zukas. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, remembering that we started launching a little bit late. Then our next smoke, we want to be able to cover all the way from that first part of the smoke all the way to that right wall, and then that's going to cover all of our boats of Zukas. And then with the last 4, some people like to rapid tap all boats, or you can just continue with the flare landing, all staggered in a line. You can see that first smoke's about to expire, and I'm not going to be able to get my Zukas out of that smoke. And then you got to remember that as soon as you finish tapping that last Zuka, you need to be flaring up, because you need to be, depending on whether if there's no defense here, then your Zukas are going to sort of start spreading like this, because these might be going to this closest defense, these might be going to this closest defense. In this case, they're all going to go straight towards that flamethrower. Well, straight towards, they're going to spread out, to kind of make this shape a little bit closer. So they're aiming to go there. That is really messy, right? They're going to aim to be about there. So some of the Zukas are going to walk left and some of the Zukas are going to walk right. So it's a lot of spread to try and maintain with your smoke. So your next, if you were to flare into this corner, or higher, say you were doing commando or something like that, then ideally you want your next smoke, if you want to be really efficient, you want your next smoke to be about there, and you don't want this second smoke to expire before you get there. So you need to send that flare as soon as you've dropped that last boat. Send that next flare, because you're going to be right into that corner. So let's have a look. 2, 3, and then you can see the smoke is expiring before we get under. So if there was a rocket launcher in range, we definitely would have lost the delay. But you can see that all of these boats landed under the smoke, which is perfect. And then we would flare up into that corner, next smoke, and you see that this smoke didn't expire before we got there. And then they'll get all nice and tightly grouped. And that's the 2 smoke landing on the right hand side of the right hand down beach. So let's have one last look at it. So the major point to note is that our first smoke point is in line with that line, and about, let's have a look, how far up the beach do we need it to be? So it's right on that line. So you'll see that there's a line here, and that continues all the way through to here. That's going to be our reference point. So let's have another look. So right here is where we want to drop that first smoke. And then the next one is going to be just the same level or height up the beach, but it's going to be covering that whole rest of that gap. So we should end up with 1, 2 smokes. And there you go. So that's the 2 smoke flare landing right hand side of the right beach. Give us a comment down below if you do it any differently. If you have any success with a 9 boat landing, because this is obviously only with 8 boats of your troops. And give us a thumbs up if you like the video, thumbs down if you didn't, and subscribe for more Boom Beach.